You're listening to Melanated Rising, Episode 3. On this show, we inspire, uplift, and ignite Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other people of color creatives and athletes. Here, we have open and honest conversations on topics and issues affecting us as people of color, as creatives of color, and how to take what limits us and turn it into what ignites us and our creative work. Every episode is an exploration into what is possible when Black and Brown creatives stand in our undeniable power. I'm Kristen Iris.
And I'm Ebony Tutora.
Welcome to Melanated Rising. Thank you all for joining us, whether you are on the audio feed or the video feed. Today, I'm so happy to have Ebony with us. And to let you know a little bit about her, if you don't know this fabulous, fabulous woman, Ebony is a certified life coach, motivational speaker, writer, and the founder behind the empowerment brand Queens Recognize Queens. She is a powerhouse of thought, light, and love, offering revolutionary insight into how changing ourselves little by little is the change we wish to see. She hosts and collaborates with other women to offer unique, holistic workshops, events, and online classes to assist women in their pursuit of their highest confidence and potential. Through methods of self-love and self-discovery, Ebony shares the methods that have allowed her to thrive as a champion of life. Her passion comes in giving women the much-needed tools and perspective to shift their lives into gear of being a true queen. Her work gives women confidence, clarity, and courage to live their lives with ease, wisdom, and grace. Welcome to the show, lady.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm actually excited that I think you're amazing, first of all.
So thank you.
I totally do.
I definitely felt like you were an excellent fit for this topic, which for you guys who are listening is we are talking about turning your pain, your trauma, your past experiences into a gift. And that's something that I've recently come into and been able to do. And that's why I wanted to bring someone who, like, this is what she does. I wanted to bring someone who's in here to talk about it, and how we can do that, and how that can actually really create powerful change for us. So I'm just going to start with you. Let's just start with why is it so important for us to do this, especially as women of color and as people of color?
I think just as people of color, because I'm mixed, so I've seen both sides. And both sides, luckily I don't have, like extremely racist white people that I had to learn from. They're actually really, they're different in how I grew up learning from them as well. But there's just this thing, especially with people of color, we hold everything in. We have this tendency to just hold it in, not talk about it, or there's that pray about it. I have a friend, they're like family to me, but they pray about everything. Like, oh my God, it's about the rain. That's the devil. That's God, and that's called rain. Okay. But just really early on as a kid, I learned probably by the age of 13 that our childhoods affect our adulthood. I learned that, and it helped me forgive my mother because she was so mean to me as a child. She had 3 boys, 1 girl, and I was the only girl. So I noticed that I got all the brunt of her anger because I listened, because I was the girl. I was the most susceptible to her anger because she didn't find her authority with men or with boys. So then as I got older, then I also experienced rape at the age of 18, and I got sent. I always knew a lot of things. I always loved psychology. Both of my parents have bipolar, so psychology was like my saving grace of just understanding and being able to cope. Mm-hmm. So when I was 18, I was dating this guy for about over 3 years, and I finally did get away from him, and he ended up raping me. I went back. He had some belongings that were mine, like stupid stuff that you care about as an 18-year-old. As a grown woman, you'd be like, burn them and burn yourself. So I go back. He ends up holding me hostage. He rapes me. But this whole experience was just so surreal to me. It was just like those moments that every breath you take, everything you look at, every wind that goes by you, like you feel everything. You're just in the moment. And after that experience, I got sent to a psychologist. I went through the rape kit thing in the hospital, the police officer, like the whole process, testifying, like the whole 9. So I got sent to a psychologist, and I thought, this is not for me.
Okay.
Psychology, because the setup of it was just, it's an older white woman. It's like, I don't know how much you understand me, or like, I just didn't
Yes.
feel it. It made
Yeah.
me really angry, like, to be there, that she wasn't talking back to me, that I was just talking to her. It was just like, wasn't my thing. So I was like, okay, I have to let this go now. And I have to find a way to let it go, to heal from it, not quickly, because that took years of erasing that experience of my time with him, of just like the hauntingness of like pressing charges and like, is he going to come kill me? Like all these crazy things. But it's so important for us to understand that we need to heal, because energetically, as I've learned and grown and learning about energy and chakras and different things, we hold these things in, and then we get sick, and then we have pain, and then we experience all these other things. And then, we all know from a basic level how you can easily take one bad thing from a previous situation into a new situation. We all understand that when you get into a new situation and you're treating this, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to have this repetition of men. I didn't want to have the repetition of situations, which for a little bit I did, which also helped that discovery and that healing, because I had to recognize, this is about you, right? This is not some story that you create where you say, well, people do this. They'll go, all men are the same, men are this, people are this. And it's like, when we take accountability for our healing and for the parts we play in allowing ourselves to heal, I think that's how you find your power. That's how you find your power, and you learn yourself, and you learn what you don't like, what you do like, what you will accept, what you won't accept. And it just shifts you into the person that you need to be. And I've just seen that through those experiences. So that's that in a nutshell.
There's so many different things that you hit on there that are things that I wanted to dive into, because I relate to a lot of that, especially in like a relationship context, because I was in my last relationship was an emotionally abusive relationship, and it became sort of like a window to looking at different things about myself and how I was showing up. And coming out of it, like when you're, like you said, when you're in it, everything's just like it's intense and it's surreal, and it can be hard to even really get a good perspective of what's going on. And this isn't just about relationships. It's about whatever has happened to you, that when you're in the moment, it can be very raw and extremely painful and very hard to get a grasp of like what's really going on, and what even like your role may be in the circumstance, which I know we were just talking about emotionally abusive relationships and rape. So I'm not saying that like rape is the victim's fault or anything like that. But I mean, in terms of like the relationship that I was in, like I had to own, like, what was I doing that was perpetuating this cycle? Like, what was I doing that was keeping me back in this place? And I had to own that. And so like when you're in it, it can be really challenging. And also it can feel like it's like you're never going to be free of it. Like this pain and this trauma and this hurt that like when you're in that place, it can feel like you're like this has ruined you, or like this has destroyed your life, or that this has broken something in you that can't be fixed. And that's actually not true. And so for everyone listening, like that's one of the things that I want you to understand is it's actually not true. Like whatever you're going through, whatever you're feeling, yes, it can be extremely painful. It can be extremely traumatic, but it doesn't have to rule you, which is why this conversation is so important. And, like you said, as people of color, a lot of times we don't talk about things. And I think also for us, we live in a society that is constantly trying to push us down, and so if we don't learn how to take that and turn it into stepping stones, like that's how we rise.
Yeah.
Is these experiences and even like these oppressions can actually be really powerful for us moving forward, to in terms of like what we learned from it, what we gained from it, what was the blessing that we wouldn't have gotten in another circumstance, and to be able to take that and sort of like in an alchemical transformational process, turn the shit into like gold.
Yeah.
You get to turn it into something else that ends up being this powerful fuel for you. So Yeah, so
I
I,
love
I
that you
totally.
brought that up. I love that you brought that up, especially, everything is perspective, right? So the minute you take something and you feel broken from it and and I think just as people of color, right? That's a feeling that's already felt from society, right? There's all
Yes.
this junk that comes from society and everything is beliefs, right? You don't have, and we have to understand we don't have to accept anything. And I love how Amanda Seals, who you know her, I mean, she's
Mhm.
an avid, she's an avid supporter of Black culture and all those things. And one of the things she said in her interview with the Breakfast Club was, this is super important. And then I'll go back to that other thing, which is we have to stop making white, uh, what do I want to call it? How did she say it? It was kind of like we make them the center of what we want to be accepted as, right? Whether it's the award
Yes.
shows, whether it's the accolades, whether it's we want their A-OK for you guys are great. We do love these braids, and they did come from Africa, and they didn't come from California and Kim Kardashian. Like, we need to stop seeking that. So everything is right. Everything is perspective, and when we have to understand. In order to understand ourselves, we have to understand all the things that play into like the soup of who we are, which is that feeling of unworthiness that we get from the world, right? You get that, and then you get into a relationship where, oh my God, Joe Schmo made you feel unworthy again, and then you're like, I just feel so broken. And I know it's not true because we are so strong, especially Black women. We have this thing of like doing it all until we're dead, until we're just keeling over
Yeah.
and dead and just we don't exist anymore. And
And that's part of our conditioning too.
it's not true though, but look how strong we are, right?
Hmm.
But in perspective, when you really look at the picture, we're actually strong as hell. We're actually able to overcome quite a bit, but the problem with the overcoming is we don't let go. We internalize it with that rhetoric of I feel broken, of this broke me, or if you even feel ever like something threw you off track, that's never true. And that's a perspective that takes time to wrap your mind around. Even the fact of you saying like, even, that tragedy is a blessing. I think everything that's happening for and to Black people is a blessing because it causes all of us to rise higher, to think higher, to dream bigger, to stop waiting for approval, to create our communities, to create these kind of sister circles and conversations where years ago, Black women weren't having this intimate conversation about these type of things to really even break down our own humanness and say, oh my God, girl, you've been through that too? Like, oh my God, like I would have never known you've been through that, or I would have never known you felt that way, or just that openness of supporting each other, right? Due to conditioning of the
Hmm.
hating and the man not being in the relationship, or how getting public assistance forced Black men out the house because it was if he's with you, you can't get it. All these different things that have made us who we are. When we understand those things, we can also step back and look at the conditioning and say, I'm not going to believe that, and I'm not going to believe that I'm broken, and I'm not going to believe that I think even therapy for us as Black women is like taboo.
Oh
Like,
yeah, for people of color in general, it's taboo. Like, for
yeah,
because there's like the pray about it is like I didn't really get that because my mom's Puerto Rican, and so I
okay.
wasn't raised like in like a Black American household.
Mm,
Not exactly, and so I get that, but I've heard so many people say that they're like just pray about it, or like it shows that we have a weakness and we have to be this strong Black woman.
mm,
That's what like society wants, that's what society expects, and like we're not allowed to break. And then people of color, like for men too, there's they're not allowed to want help, they're not allowed to get help because there's just stigma around it.
yeah. Yeah. And I think just this discussion about pain, turning your pain into power, right? Everything is energy, right? And we can, how many of us have been so pissed off? There's two routes, right? You're so pissed off at an ex or a situation and you just lose it and you do some conniving, just some shit that you shouldn't do, right? Because you have so much energy and anger, like that's energy. And however you've taken that, you ball it up and you're like, like I'm gonna break all your stuff, whatever it is, right? Throw bleach on your clothes. I don't know, whatever is the crazy things we do. Or you take it and you use it to fuel a powerful move,
Hmm.
right? for me, it was more about even going through the rape. I think the thing that propelled me the most was I got a call from the detective, and he goes, "I really need to talk to you," because I think they thought I wouldn't testify because this was like a big drug dealer guy. His brother was a police officer, so there's all this stuff mixed into it that makes me not safe. So it took
Wow.
extreme belief and faith to say, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be like, talk about perspective. Like I had to talk myself out of paranoia. So he calls me and he goes, I know you're probably nervous. They thought I was going to back out of this. And he's like, I just got to let you know he raped 3 other women. One I knew about. The other 2 happened in New York City with like something in a club with a girl where he like drugged her, took her home, some craziness. Anyways, but that really, I know, serious. But to think that I allowed this person into my life, I allowed this person to be intimate, to have a relationship with them. So it was all this stuff, but the power that propelled me even more was kind of like a post I posted the other day about all the women we represent and just who we are today, right? We forget that what we represent. So that's just a part of the story that propelled me. And then I had my first daughter, and like a couple years went by, and no, maybe she was like 1 or 2, and my grandmother decides to reveal to me she was raped by her father. Now my
Wow.
grandmother's Caucasian, right? But talk about holding shit in. And just to see that generational path of similarity, and just to see that she held it in for so long, and like how that would make her feel, and I'm like, damn, I'll keep my shoes. Like I'd rather go through my situation than yours. They're both equally as bad, however, that I'd rather not experience that and have to get over that. But to just see that, like, that gives me power, and that gives me the ability to say I'm not going to stew in the feeling of feeling broken, because you do feel that way, and I think you have to allow yourself to feel that way.
Hmm.
I think there's
Yes.
so much out there that's like heal or just be happy. Because I was like that as a teen. At first, my understanding of psychology was like just be positive, and that really fucked me up. Because in being positive, can I curse? I'm sorry. I'll try not to. I think it really messes us up when we focus on just being positive and not
Yes.
allowing ourselves to feel those emotions of hurt, to cry those sobbing cries where we feel like our heart has been torn from our body. I think that's okay. And I think that we have to understand that that is a part of healing too. It's not the positive, like skip for the day and smell the flowers. Sometimes it's, I feel like shit. And I'm going to sit in this, and I'm going to explore it, and I'm going to see why. And I'm going to analyze all the thoughts and feelings that I have to make sure I don't keep reaching these lows.
Yes, I completely agree with you on that. And there is a lot of like, just be positive, just be happy. Like you're not allowed. And this is the danger with those kinds of teaching is that it tells you that you're not allowed to feel what you're feeling. You're not allowed to feel the pain. You're not allowed to feel angry. You're not allowed to have like feel grief, for whatever it was that you feel like you lost in the circumstance. And it's dangerous, and it doesn't do us, it doesn't do us good, because it's also not human. It is human to feel these things. It is human to have a full spectrum of emotion, and we need that. And when I was going through really challenging times or really painful times, like giving myself that space, like I'm glad that I was living by myself, because giving myself that space to just be like, I'm fucking upset, and I am fucking hurting, and I am like belting Adele at the top of my lungs, like letting all my feelings come out, like being able to actually feel the feelings is one of the things that was part of my healing process. Because in this challenging relationship I had with this person in the beginning, it's like I had compartmentalized, and I remember explaining it to a friend of mine as like, no, I just put that stuff like in this box in my mind, and it's like over here in this box in my mind, and I have it locked up, and I'm just gonna leave it there until it doesn't hurt so bad anymore. And then like a year later, I remember because it was about a year later, I realized, and I think I was talking to the same friend, and I was like, well, at least all the feelings are out of the box now, and I'm feeling them, and I didn't die. Like I'm still here. I've survived feeling them. So I'm not gonna try and lock them up again. I'm just gonna like let myself feel. And being able to let that cycle through helped me to process what was really going on. It helped me to, at least like at that time. And then there was more for years it was like off and on with this person that was but like at that time, at least some of the things that had happened, it helped me to kind of process that and really see what was going on. Because the thing is, if you're not letting yourself feel what's happening for you, you can't really fully understand what's happening for you.
Mhm.
For you, not just to you, but what's happening for you. And you can't really look at it when you're shutting down a huge part of yourself, and the part of yourself that needs that healing, that needs that expression, that needs to be acknowledged, and needs to be cared for through that process.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the compartmentalization, because that's huge. That's huge.
Hmm.
That is huge. That's the part where I talk about, we move on. Everyone can move on, but we don't let go.
Oh
Letting
yes,
go is like a
yes,
whole different healing process. And
yeah.
I'm more of an avid, the more that I go through things that are just really shitty, the more that I have to remind myself to let go quicker, to feel them quicker, to have the conversations. Like with my spouse, we went through some things where he cheated, and these were at points of our relationship where it's like, dude, really? Like, we have kids, and it's just processing all that for you shit, right? Not to you, because that's
Mhm.
easy to do. But then you get into this blame game of, how could you do this to me? And that doesn't serve you. That leads you more to like, of more hows. You want more hows and whens, and
And those are
right?
natural questions to ask, because I had a lot of those questions too. Like, how could
They
you
are.
do this to me? How
They
could
are.
blah, blah, blah? How could X, Y, and Z? And it's like, now that I, like, in the moment, it's very natural to do that, but you can't
Yeah.
stay there, because
Right.
now I'm not at this place of how could you do this to me? Now I'm like, oh, I understand why you did this to me.
Yes.
And it's not okay, but I understand why you did it better than he does, actually.
Yeah. And it helped me understand just a lot of things about people. It helped me understand about my own self, and to take accountability for, I kind of had this strong Black woman mentality. Like, I make a lot of money. I don't really need you. Like, if you want to go, you can go. Like, and you can't act like that. You can't treat men like that and think like that's building them up. Like, they're like dogs. They need to be stroked. Like, we just have to accept it. I was at a
They
conference.
want love. They want love too, just like we do.
Seriously. Yeah, I was at this conference with all these really powerful men that have great positions. And it's funny because I'm sitting in the front, and this one guy kept looking at me, and he's like, listen to us. And it's funny because my husband always says that, listen to me. You don't listen. We listen with our ears and not ears to just listen to them, because they don't always want healing and feedback, and they're not like us. They think singular, so sometimes they're just talking about it to talk about it. So
Hmm.
it helped me mature, it helped him mature, but it also taught me about, when you're around the right people, when that space feels good, right? Because when I was with the other guy who was abusive and raping other women on the fly, right? Coming to find out, it was more of like, oh, I never cheated on you, and I never had that he would make me feel like I was nuts. It was emotional abuse, physical abuse. He was domestically violent. He was a boxer, so I was afraid of him. I'd had guns pulled out on me, so it was a whole different bowl of soup. And then with this one, I got to see that, when you're really with someone you deserve to be with, and they deserve you, that space doesn't feel so hurtful. It hurts, but they give you that space, even if it's silence, even if it's, you know, just giving you that space to vent, and to tell them all the shitty things about them that you have going on in your mind, without rebutting, for giving you a rebuttal, without saying, don't, whatever people create in their own minds to make the situation better for themselves, but giving you that space to say, you're right, and that was its own little moment of learning and maturity. But, I think the longer we have, and I don't know if you follow Dr. Joe Dispenza. Do you follow him?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't
He
know if I
wrote
follow him.
the placebo effect.
Oh, okay.
So that book's just about, it's all perception and what we understand and belief. And the major thing he talks about is, he gives an example of, like, someone experiences a death, and someone dies, and they're like, oh yeah, I've been grieving. How long have you been grieving? I've been grieving for a year, right? Once you do that, you've created the memory, you've almost given it a home in your brain, right? Just like you talked about the you didn't compartmentalize it, you gave it a home. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna live over there, and then whenever I want to go into that house and deal with that, whatever's in that house, which is scary, monstrous stuff, I'll deal with it, right? And it's an issue because then that's just like, it's like a brainwave that's created that then pulls more things to you that will bother you, that will poke at that house to say, you need to look in there. So the more we let go and the more we're willing to go into that space and really sit in there, and it's uncomfortable as hell. So we have
Yeah,
to admit that. Like that
it
shit is
is.
uncomfortable. It's like taking your skin off. It's like needing to go somewhere, but there's nowhere to go. It's like you could go to Hawaii and go on vacation and you'll still feel like crap.
Yes, yes.
You
Oh my gosh. Yes.
right? You could go anywhere and it still feels like I can't go anywhere. I can't talk to anyone. There's no book that I can read. Like it's just a space that you have to sit in and analyze. And, I'm a journaler. I like to
Me too.
journal.
Yep.
That's one of the things that I think I will never not do, whether it's the dumping and being honest and saying, I feel like this and that, blah, 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 like getting it out, because sometimes getting it out to other people gets misunderstood, and then it gets into a conversation that leads to an argument because it's not really a conversation. It's just a bunch of jumbled thoughts and feelings and things, right? So, I think we just have to really be okay with what we're talking about as far as the uncomfortable spaces, and knowing that you have to choose power. You have to keep telling yourself, this is for me, and there's a lesson and a blessing here for me, and I'm gonna find it. And with that situation, even with my husband, with the guy, I found that blessing quickly. I knew automatically I had to empower other women. Like at 18, I was like, I have to empower other women, because if there's women who are getting raped and they're afraid to press charges, like that's crazy. As scary as the guy may be, like that's just crazy to me that women don't, they would back down from speaking up about something that happened to them that was wrong. But with that situation with my husband, I had that blessing took a long time to find. I really had to work through that through myself with him, and we totally came out to a much better side. Totally, totally, totally. But the more we structure our mind for that, and the more we believe that, more, not just say it, because people say it, it's very churchy, kind of like the I'll pray for you, like, oh, this is a blessing. No, really feel it. Like,
yeah,
really feel it.
yeah, exactly. It can't be lip service. You have to actually find the blessing.
Yeah.
Actually find the lesson, find the blessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, there was a couple of things you said there, which is like when you're in it or when you're trying to heal, that, yeah, like letting yourself experience it and letting yourself express it. But like, again, like you put it in a box and things will keep pointing at the box because it's unresolved. And so to be like, hey, look at me. And that's exactly what happens. It's like, look at me over here. And things don't have to be always nice, and they don't have to be perfect. And you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. So what you said about being uncomfortable and being, like kind of embracing that, like, don't think that the healing process is going to be pretty. Like it's not, it's going to be fucking ugly. Okay. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be ugly, and that's okay, because that's part of the process. And I find that like the more we resist it, the harder it is. Like now that I've gone through this process several times, like I'm much faster at it. At like, okay, what's going on here? What was my role here? What can I learn here? How can I grow? Like what's gonna put me in a place where I am standing in my power and feeling good and being who I am, and not being caught in this past crap. Like what are the patterns that are being created here, and how can I change them? Like I'm much faster at it. That's why I work with my clients. It's like the same thing. Like my past experience, I was like, oh my God, I learned so much about myself in doing this. I have to go help other people. And that's part of it, is like, what are the things that were being created when this thing happened, or the things before that, and what is that, how is that showing up in your life now? And changing that. But when you resist it and you fight it and you want to constantly and maybe only put responsibility on other things or other people, it keeps you in that place. Now, here's the thing. Some people like being in that place. Okay. Some people actually don't. they don't really want to be out of it because it gives them a ready-made excuse for why things aren't the way they want.
Yeah.
It gives them a ready-made excuse for why they're not accomplishing or this or that. And it gives them a reason for being held back instead of, I really, really tried hard. I really did all the things that I could and something didn't work out.
Yeah.
So like they prefer to stay in that place. But if you are like, I actually don't want to stay in this place, I need to do something to get out of it, then that's where you have to really step into that discomfort and step into, like you said, taking responsibility for your healing, because some people want to stay there. Like,
and I think people, when I look at people that do have those habits of wanting to stay there, and Joe Dispenza talks about this too, because it's like an addiction to negative behavior. It becomes an addiction to the endorphins and the things that are released by just being negative, right? And as much as we think we don't like it, it's like the people that complain, but they'll always complain and they'll never do anything to change it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Too many people like that. I know way too many people like that. I'm just like, ugh, right? You're like, I always, even when I had my last job, I used to tell people, if you're going to be miserable, that's fine. Just keep it at the door. Like, we don't care, like when you walk in here, just know that this is a different atmosphere. Like, we're letting all that go, be miserable outside the door. When you step in, just choose to let that go. I don't care. We can't keep caring for you when you don't care for yourself. That's impossible, right? It's kind of like you can't give healing to people who love to be sick, right?
Yes.
So people have to realize if they're like that. And I've noticed that people who are like that, they go out to drink a lot. They use drugs. Like, I'm not against marijuana, but other drugs, right? Very dangerous drugs. They're always needing company. So they have different addictions. Maybe their addiction is social media. Maybe their addiction is something that helps them avoid, right?
Yes, it helps them to numb out. They want to numb out.
Right. An avoidance tool, because they don't want to be present. They don't want to feel those things. They just want to sugarcoat it, move on. Maybe they drink too much. Like, everyone has an addiction of some sort. When you ignore those things, right? When you're not operating in your power, you're just finding other things to go, oh, right, obesity and all these different things that just aid our society in being that way. And what was my point? There was something you said. What you resist persists. So I'm an analogy person. I love pictures because I see them in my head. So when you were talking, I was like, this is perfect. So I thought about a virus, right? You have a virus on your computer and all those pop-ups keep popping up, right? You try to clean it, you don't really clean it, and the only way to clean it is to purchase that software that's like $100 that you don't want to get, right? It makes you uncomfortable, right? It makes you uncomfortable. And having a virus on your computer is super discomforting because it's annoying. You keep getting pop-ups, you're trying to do work, and it's like, oh, buy this. Oh, you want $100 Walmart gift card. Oh, right? And it doesn't stop until you get the software that you need. And it's the same way for our brain. So I thought about that analogy when you're
yeah, that makes sense.
because it doesn't stop. Those pop-ups are crazy, right? Your computer goes crazy until it officially just shuts down and it won't work. Right. So we have to be able to catch ourselves before we allow these memories, these experiences that happen for us, not to us, for us to really shape us into who we're meant to be. Because that's all they do. All they do is they give you a spotlight of work you need to do. And it's uncomfortable, especially if you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, where did I play a part in this? That's uncomfortable.
Yes, that's hella uncomfortable.
It is.
That is definitely part of the work that I do with clients. I'm like, what was your role in this?
Yeah.
Because you have to own your part. It's not just like these other people's part or the situation's part or society's fault. Like, what's your part in this as well? Yeah. That's uncomfortable as hell, because then you're like, fuck, I can't blame other people.
Right. And we also realize our addiction to do that, our addiction to say, well, because of my mom, I'm this way, or because of my parents, my dad was never there, right? Nobody had a dad. Like, we're a dadless generation, okay? Like, can we all just
but some people do have dads. I don't want to hate on all the dads out there.
We're not hating on them. I'm just saying, with numbers and statistics, I mean, we're a pretty fatherless nation a little bit. There was a lot of people that didn't have dads or had messed up childhoods, you're lucky if you had a decent childhood. You really are, to some extent. If you had a normal family, you're really lucky. Like that, you're like the minority right now.
Yeah, I don't even know what the fucking normal family is.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's my point. Like,
I mean, and not that I had a bad childhood. I don't know what at this point, I don't know what a normal family is. Like,
yeah. And I mean, normalcy, what is that entirely? But
exactly.
I mean, just in general, just some of the things most of us have faced, or even talking about my grandmother experiencing rape and my mother experiencing domestic violence, my aunt experiencing domestic violence, I experienced domestic violence. Like that's 3 generations of that. It was a wake up call for me. You know, we talk about generational curses in the church, and I'm just like, it's a curse because we choose it, right? And there's repetitive behaviors that we take from our parents, whether it's the ignoring the truth, right? And back in the day, it was like women, it was like they would ignore that they were being abused. It was more so of a conversation with their girlfriends, like, girl, what did you do to him? What did you do to get him mad? You know what I'm saying? Right? It just was a different conversation. So, you know, it created different people. So that was a wake up call for me to be like, okay, you have got to change, and you can own so much power from their power because you can learn from them. And there's so much wisdom that you can just take from their experiences, make it your own, and just become a lot more powerful than they'll ever be able to come, because they've lived their lives already, and they, you know, they're kind of stuck in their ways and they process things a certain way. So, you know, my healing too, that's the other thing that's important, is we don't realize that our healing allows past generations to heal.
Yes.
That's important. And it's like, it's not about us. Like, you have to do the work, because when you do the work and people see how you process things, it's like, oh, wow, like I congratulate you for how you went through that. Like, Ebony, you're smiling and you were raped. Like, I'm like, yes, I am. I'm smiling because I'm here. It was for me. It made me the best person I ever could be. And for me to take that away, take that experience away from my greatness, it's not fair. And it's part of my life. It's part of my story. You have to own it.
Yes. Yeah. What you said about the generational, I think that's really important for us, especially as people of color, because we do have these generational traumas and these generational conditionings. You know, like what we do, our kids see that. Like, even if they don't know, even if they don't really know what's going on in the background, we see how our mothers were treated by our fathers. We see how our fathers were treated by our mothers, or how they interacted. And so you can get women who are, you know, if their parents, if the father was not there for the mom or was abusive or something like that, we see not only that, okay, this is how the man is treating the woman, but also this is how I should allow things to happen. You know, like we see things being allowed. And so when we change the story for ourselves and we learn how to heal that for ourselves, we get to heal that generational conditioning, and the next people that, you know, we rear into the world and that we raise into adults that are going to be set free into the wild, we're teaching them by how we interact with each other as well. And so they're seeing, you know, we get to create a new example of this is how a man should treat a woman, or I don't even want to put gender on it. This is how partners should treat each other. This is what a partnership is, or this is what a friendship is, or this is what blah, 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 whatever other kind of relationship is, to give them an example of what is healthy. Because if you're saying this is healthy, but you're doing something else, they're going to copy what you do.
Yeah.
They're not going to fucking listen to what you say. They're like, oh, you should have somebody you treat to like blah, blah, blah. But when you see someone taking shit, you end up taking shit. You know? And so you get to, when you learn how to change that and heal that for yourself, you get to heal. It's part of like that generational healing and ancestral healing that's getting carried forward into future generations, which is why this is so powerful to do. So what are let's see a little bit of like, what are some of like the key things? We've touched on it a little bit, but like some of the key things to part of this like healing process and like finding the blessing, finding the lesson, finding the blessing. What are some things that you think?
Yeah. So focusing on our perspective, that's key. You know, you have to, the minute sticky things happens, crappy things, whatever you want to call them, you have to claim the truth of this. There's a blessing here. You have to start that momentum, even if you can't see it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
have to do that. You have to. That's imperative. The other thing is you have to notate, are you moving on or are you officially letting it go? Right? Because sometimes in letting go, right, you said you had this cycle of going back and forth. Sometimes we think that like dealing with that person is part of our healing and closure. We're too much of a society of wanting closure, right? Like quotes around that.
Yeah.
Where like, but closure, and I learned this by girls wanting to like beat me up all the time and like having to walk away and that kind of sucking a little bit because people are like, oh, she's such a punk. And then when I finally did fight, they're like, oh, she's really not a punk. She just walks away because she's smart. Like, I don't want to go to jail, you folks, but we have to understand that sometimes closure is walking away. Like that is the closure that we need. It's not dealing with them. It's not like everyone's not on your wavelength that you can sit down, friends, family, ex-boyfriends, that the closure is like a really real one-on-one person-to-person conversation, because not everybody's willing to have that, because not everybody's willing to admit their fault.
Yes.
That becomes the blame game. It becomes, well, you did this. Well, you did this. It's not like a listening of, well, you made me feel like this. Well, I'm sorry that I made you feel like everyone can't have conversations like that. And we have to understand that the closure is in our own healing and just saying, I'm going to let this go. So we have to, did we compartmentalize or did we really let it go? I think the next thing is being okay with the down days, the down feelings, the anger, the resentment, all of that, because when you feel them, and you're also able to let them go quicker.
Yes, absolutely.
Opposed to avoiding them. And, when I was going through my stuff, I was like hanging out with my friends. I was trying to compensate for that feeling. It was a short period of time because I've already been through too much stuff to allow it to go on for it was like a good week of like, I was eating out like every day because I didn't want to be in the house. It was such an uncomfortable feeling of just being in the house. Like everything was just so uncomfortable to me. So I was like trying to go out to eat all the time, I was going out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So we have to feel it, just feel it, sit in it, right? And in those sitting in moments, one of the things that I've always done, I'm a poet. I like to write poems, which I know you do too. Poems are healing, even if your poems make no sense.
Yeah.
Even if you're not the next freaking Robert Frost, or I don't know, Maya Angelou, right, let it out, because there's certain conversations that we need to have with ourselves, that we need to be able, there's such a healing power that I realized in going back and reading what you wrote. Because you read it and you're like, wow, like I remember that day. I remember how that felt. And we don't realize the healing power of putting it from a pen to paper, because that's another form of letting go, right? This is how I feel, and opposed to compartmentalizing it and putting up there, I'm going to put it on this piece of paper.
Yep.
So that if ever I do get in this funk, I go back and I read it again. And in reading it, you heal, because as you're reading it, you don't want to be there again. You don't want to feel that again. You start dissecting what you felt, how you felt, it leads to different expanding thoughts, opposed to closing yourself into the why me, how me, why, right?
Yes.
And it's like, how can I use this as power, right? And then you get this brilliant idea where you're like, I'm going to create Melanated Rising. I'm going to do something that really feels good, but it comes from pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because pain is healed wisdom, and we have to understand that. And the more you avoid your healing, the more you avoid the wisdom that's there for you.
Yes.
There's always wisdom. It always opens up newer doors for whether that's a better relationship, because now you understand yourself from a different perspective, that you spot the guys who might look good, they talk a good game, but you're like, you remind me of Joe.
You're like, I recognize this pattern. I know you.
Right. You're going to stay in the friend zone, but you're in that box, right? And you're okay with that, because you know yourself and you can see things from a mile away. 20/20 vision isn't behind you, it's in front of you. I really think those are some of the key things. I mean, obviously I meditate, which I think for some people that's hard to do, but when you still your mind, you take yourself out of your experience, you take yourself out of your physical world, at least for a little bit, for calmness, and a still mind is a powerful mind, right? Because when you go through things, your mind just goes crazy, and it just goes like,
yeah, you're everywhere. It's like
yeah,
bing, bing, bing,
oh my
bing.
God.
Like
Yeah.
all the awful things that you can be thinking are just constantly running through your head.
And we have to look at those things as a virus. They're not good for our body. They lead to disease. They lead to, us not making the best judgment calls or the best decisions. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. So the more that we're able to feel it and be okay with it and focus on, are we letting it go? Are we stilling our minds so that we can hear those thoughts, so that we can, look at them head on, our demons, if you will. I think our demons are like, you need to be their friends. You need to really figure out why they're messing with you. Like, why are you haunting me? Because we need, the last thing I would say is, in all that soup of good stuff and advice, we have to learn that, yes, healing is a process, but the more wisdom you gain, kind of like you said, you're like, I'm faster. I'm faster at it. And we have to realize that the more you lean into it, those next times, that window of suffering is not as long. It's not 4 years of dwelling.
Yes.
Right?
You have like a process. You have like refined a way of moving through and shifting into healing. Like when you figure it out, then you can start stepping into that process faster.
Yeah, and it's a higher understanding that God calls us to move through, because life is life. Life is just these things. It is these experiences. We expect it to be rainbows and butterflies, and that's just, those things are just here to give proof of faith, proof of belief, proof of awesomeness, proof of a thing that we just can't understand all the time, and that we have to understand is within us and is working through us, and that, like you said, everything is for us, right? That was like the last thing. Everything is for us, right? So also saying this is a blessing and this is for me, this is happening for me, changes your perspective immediately, because then you're not choosing to suffer. You're not choosing to take the woe is me and the victimized route, no matter the situation. Like, I think people go through really crappy stuff, and the other thing that happens is we say, well, she was raped by a guy that she knew, and I was raped by a guy when I was walking through the park. Right? However, situations are still situations, and everything happens for you no matter what it is. So you have to find that blessing. You have to find the strength in that, and really pull out your greatness through that. I mean, that's what life is in a nutshell.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all that. The feeling is really important, and I think also the exploring how you got there. Like, what was going on for you here? Like, what patterns did this create? The responsibility, I mentioned that earlier. And I think in terms of turning it into a gift is like looking back at it. And I say back because I feel like it's something I wasn't doing in the moment. I think in the moment I was like, okay, this has got to be going somewhere for me somehow. Like it's not always going to feel like this. I know it's going to get better, but looking back is looking at like, okay, well, what did I really gain from this that I would not have gained otherwise? Like what did I, whether it's a new perspective, whether it is creating something, whether it is like writing, whether it is putting together a project that is going to help other people, like whatever it is, like what is it that I gained from this that is really going to help me in the future? And you use that. You get to use that and you get to take that, because that's your gift. It's not just this shitty thing happened and now you're stronger and more resilient. Like, yeah, all those things are great. And I'm definitely not downplaying that, because that is definitely part of how I got here. Yeah. But there's also like my experiences have led me to a place where I can really powerfully help other people in a way that I would definitely not have been able to do if I hadn't gone through it, because I wouldn't have looked back at it. But you have to get through. You can't just stay stuck in it. You can't just stay stuck in it and have this experience. You have to get through to the point where you're like, okay, I can look back and even feel like maybe gratitude for what happened. And that was a fucking hard one for me, I gotta say. That was really, I was like, I don't want to be grateful because it feels like I'm being grateful to this person for what they did. It's like, I'm not. I'm grateful that I had this experience. Yeah. I'm grateful that I learned these different things. I'm grateful that it equipped me with the tools to explore my old patterns, explore my old bullshit so that I can teach that to other people. Like, that is what I gained from that experience. It doesn't even have to do with the other person. That's about, it could be any person, any person that was in that situation with me, but it's the what I gained out of that situation in terms of what I did, from the work that I did, from what I put into it. And that's where I get to use that. And like, these past experiences are now a gift to all the people that I can help going forward.
Yeah. And that's so important. I love that you touched on that last, because like I was saying, it's not about you, right? It's just not about you. And it was funny because when I was going through the cheating ordeal, there was this woman that messaged me off the whim. We connected. She came to a brunch of mine, and then she just like inboxed me and was like, my husband just cheated on me, blah, 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 blah. So I said to her, only because I chose to heal. If I didn't choose to heal, I'm like, oh my God, girl, how could he do that to you? Right? I said, I'm really sorry to hear that. You need to forgive him. That just like, she was like, you're the first person that said that to me. And just seeing you write that, like, just shifted something in me. So you don't know, like, your healing is not about you. Like, the way that we live in this world, it's like our brain and how it connects, and one thing connects to the next thing. That's how we are. And maybe one thing that you say or that we say on this thing, right? You're going to heal millions of people through your healing, right? So we have to stop making about us. We have to stop thinking, oh, I have to be a speaker. I have to be a coach. I have to be a this. You could just be having a cordial conversation with a coworker who's ready to commit suicide. And you just say one thing because you chose to heal, but you don't know what they're going through, but you just say this one thing, and then they halt in that process of wanting to take their own life. You just don't know. You don't ever know what people are thinking or feeling. So when you can talk to people from a healing and love and light perspective, you have to realize that it becomes so not about you. It becomes about healing, right? Talking about
bigger than you. Like, it's still like, I feel like it's still partly about you because it's your experience, but it becomes bigger. It becomes so much bigger than you.
It is. Totally.
Yeah. Okay. So there's something you said there that I think is interesting, because you said to her you have to forgive him, but that's not one of the things you said in terms of like, what are the key things that you need to do when you're in your healing process? And I think that's interesting, because I want to know your perspective on this, because I have, I think, probably a different perspective than most people expect when it comes to forgiveness and the healing process. So do you feel like healing, or do you feel like forgiveness is like an absolute necessary part of the healing?
I think it's a lofty word. Let me say that. Like, I really think it's a lofty word, and I think it can easily turn into, like how you said, that feeling of like, you couldn't find gratitude because it felt like you were like appreciating, right? It just turns into this other word. It just turns into this other thing. So when I think about my healing, and I kind of was having these issues with just money and just a lot of things that surround my mother, because she was real, like I said, she was extremely mean to me. However, what helps me heal when I think about forgiveness is, for everyone is different, because with the guy who raped me, I can't put myself in his shoes. I can't, I can, because I can only go so far in my imagination, like, seriously.
Yeah.
But like, for her, I just thought, as a mother, how it feels to just feel oppressed, and just all the anxieties and things she had. And it was my way of letting it go and forgiving her. And my way of forgiving everybody is different. Like, the way I have to forgive her is, as a mother, I have to show her more love as well as give her boundaries, because I know her, it's understanding someone's personality type. But I do think forgiveness is a lofty word. I do think that you have to forgive. I think you have to do it from a space that's comfortable for you. Because I think sometimes, like, I've tried to, like, I've had people that, like, wrongly talked about me and gossiped about me when I did nothing but help them. Like, they're like, oh, Ebony doesn't like to help women. She really is just like this. And I'm like, but I gave you everything that, like, I just was, like, blown away. Like, it kind of just one of those things where you're like, you want to, like, curse someone out because you're like, how could you? So in the forgiveness process, we have to understand that everybody's not at the same point in life that we are, or understanding and perspective. And like, I kept reaching out to her, and I just was like, listen, twice. I only did it twice, because after that I was like, I'm done. But that was part of my forgiveness, because it weighed so heavily on me that I had to email her and be like, yo, just so you know, like, let's refresh your memory real quick. Let me just do that. And I have no issues with you. She never responded. She still, like, she acts funny if I see her. It's kind of like that, you know, like the fake hug, the fake smile. Like, well, I had to understand that was her level of understanding. So I can't be tied up in it. Mm-hmm. My mother's the same way. Her level of understanding is she would rather dwell on things and point fingers to me, like, you don't forgive me. And I'm like, lady, let it go. Like, you're making this process like longer because you don't forgive yourself. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's why I think forgiveness is such a lofty word, because it almost feels like we have to figure out what it means for us, how to do it, how to move through it, how to let it go, how to release that emotion or negative feeling towards a situation. Right. And I think sometimes it comes down to forgiving ourselves for feeding into it or allowing it to affect us, and then letting it go. Yeah, because I think it's this funky thing of like, oh, you should call them and say sorry. And like, there has to be this closure thing. And like, that just gets too lofty, and it becomes like more of something that just creates more problems than it does solve anything. So I think forgiveness is something we have to figure out for ourselves. And in that process of hearing and feeling our emotions, really hearing and feeling those things, and walking ourselves through a forgiveness process, mm-hmm. for whatever that means.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. So that feels like on par with kind of how I feel, except that I don't actually feel like it is necessary to forgive another person. I feel like it can be really good for you. It can be healing if that's something that's working for you. But like, I have people in my past that like, I've found ways of like letting go, and I have found ways of looking at them with compassion and be like, oh, I understand why you did that, why you were in that place. I understand what was going on for you. But not necessarily like, oh, but I forgive you. And forgiveness, one, doesn't even have to be a conversation with the other person, first of all. Because like you said, not everybody's ready to like sit down and talk to you. But for me, I think you have to let go, and I think you have to forgive yourself. I don't think that you absolutely have to forgive the other person. You have to be able to let go of what happened, and to do so in a way that feels good for you and feels empowering for you, and not just like, oh, I'm silencing myself, or I'm quieting myself, or I haven't really healed, but I'm just trying to shut it away. But actually be like, no, I learned from this. I can feel compassion. I have learned to forgive myself. Like, I do think you have to forgive yourself, because you got to live with yourself. You don't have to live with other people. Okay. I have people in my past that like are not even in my life. Like my dad, me and my dad are estranged. I don't talk to my dad at all. We don't have a relationship. And you know, so like, I don't have to live with him. The only person that has to live with myself is me. And so if I can't forgive myself for what's going on, it's gonna keep plaguing me. And so I do think you have to forgive yourself for the roles that you've played, for the things that you've done, for the ways that you've hurt. I don't necessarily think you have to forgive the other person. Like, if you feel like you can let it go, and that you've let it go, and that you've gone through healing, it feels almost like going through an extra effort to forgive, or forgive in a way that looks like forgiveness to other people, is like you're just reinvesting time and energy into it when you don't need to, because you're already like, I'm actually kind of past this. I'm good. I have shit to do. I don't have to sit here and like keep working on forgiving this person, because I have actual things to do. So I think it can be like that. It doesn't have to look any particular way, but I think the forgiveness has to be for yourself at the very least. And maybe forgiving the other person is something, I mean, I think it depends on your relationship with that person. And that's something that can be really healing and can help you guys to move forward. But like I said, there's people that I'm like, okay, obvious. I'm like, you are not in the same place as me. You're not even in enough of a place to even really listen to me, and for us to have a conversation about what's happened and to move forward from there. So I am going to leave you here, and I'm going to move forward over here because you're actually dragging me down now, and just like left it.
Totally.
So that's kind of my perspective. And I know some people are like, oh, but you have to forgive. And I'm like, at this point, for some of these people, for me to go back and try, like, put effort into forgiving, I'm like, I'm literally wasting my time.
Yeah, and forgiving is like a two-step visualization process. Let's just get that right. Like it's not, it doesn't always have to be like, that process of the sit down, because everybody cannot provide you with that space, and it becomes more frustrating because while you've let it go and you're like, dude, I'm good, like let's go have ice cream, like say this was your dad, like no, we're not, like I can't, I'm gonna pound you, brother, like you know what I'm saying, but like we can't jump into like me as a 5-year-old and like take it back. However, we can build and see where it's gonna go. But when that person is still carrying a Santa Claus bag of their own shit, that doesn't allow you to even break through. Then
Oh yeah.
it creates, now you're doing more work of like, then I find you have to forgive them even more, because then they start doing more shit that's kind of like, well, I thought we were building here and you still, like, you got the bag, like, like it
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
it does become more, it does become more work. And I think it all depends. It all depends, right? With my spouse, if I chose to stay with him, which I did, that's something we need to sit eye to eye, like brother.
Yes, exactly. Like that's a certain
right,
circumstance where it's like, okay, we both are gonna have to come to a place of
right,
forgiveness here.
exactly.
With some people, it's like you can let them go, and I think you can just let it go. You don't have to go through an extra effort of like forgiving.
Yeah. Or just like, women will, I met a one girl who's like, I still look through my ex's page, like,
Mm,
honey, like there's a lot of things you have to do. And I think you touched on something amazing, which is when you let it go, you give compassion. That is a form of forgiveness, because you change the perspective from resentment, from anger to, oh, like I understand. Right. And that's why I think forgiveness is this lofty word of like nail me on the cross and like this extra stuff of work. And it doesn't have to be that. You can close your eyes, think of the person. Oh, okay, I understand. Like try to understand a little bit, walk yourself through their whatever the hell you want to do. You just walk yourself through something that allows you to let it go. Not a lofty process of like needing to talk to people. Cause I think most people, I feel like 90% of people, and are you a Virgo?
I am.
Holy shit! I know you guys. Like, you were just talking about this. I'm like, she sounds like my husband. He's a Virgo. Like, he would say something. So my best friend's a Virgo too. This is when you were talking. I'm like, that's so Virgo-ish. But Virgos are great people. I mean, you guys have great practicality when it comes to just a greater understanding of humanness and of, I think, not. I think you guys come off as like not having emotion, but I love that you're able to process what forgiveness is in a different way. That's not like this empathetic freaking like woe is me to the other person and hold their hand and like give them a hug and all this extra stuff that sometimes is not the way, and it creates more problems, and it creates more problems for you, and it gives a heavier burden to something that does need to be just let go visually and on a piece of paper, and just bygones be bygones and letting it go. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And something you said there made me think of this, is that there is a lot of I don't want to say a lot, but I feel like it can happen in like POC households where it's like, oh well, you have to forgive and forget, or like you have to forgive them and then let them stay in your life. And it's like, I actually don't have to keep this person in my life. And I want to make that clear too. Like if you do forgive them or whatever that looks like for you, it can look however it does for you. Or like for me, I'm like, okay, I can feel compassion for this person. I can understand their perspective. But to me, like you're saying that's a form of forgiveness. Me, I didn't really think about it that way. I'm like, that's a way for me to let it go. Be like, okay, I understand, but now I'm letting it go. You're not obligated to keep people in your life. And I think there's this idea that like if you forgive someone, then that means that you should be able to have them. And you're like, no, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. You need to do what is best for you. And if a person is toxic to you, you do not have to have them in your life. You can just be like, it's cool, bye. You can go and let them go. Yeah. And then move on. And that is you being able to take whatever that experience is and just go from there in whatever lessons it is that you got from it.
And you have to
that's important.
You have to read people, and you have to read people's responses. You have to, like, that's why it's so important to know yourself. Know yourself, heal your ways, heal your back. Like we all are evolving and healing, and hopefully healing and turning it into power. And once we know ourselves, we get to know other people. We spot things
Mhm.
quicker, right?
Yes.
When it comes to the forgive and forget, like some people, when you forget, that takes away the wisdom of just what you gain from the situation,
Mhm.
right? You're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna erase it, give you a clean slate. Like,
Like,
no,
no.
you don't get a clean slate.
No,
Like this
there's
is
no
this
such thing as a clean slate.
right.
Like if you look at a slate, you can always see what was on it before.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's more of, how can I, from a wise perspective, move forward, and I think with most situation, especially in toxic things that need to be let go and healed from, letting go is the forgiveness. That is the, because when you're holding on to it, it's kind of like, forgiveness, it's like you're drinking your own poison. You're drinking something that's just toxic for you. It's a virus in your body, in your thoughts, in your mind, and you just have to let it go. And if you want to force yourself into forgetting about the situation, you can't. That's not a part of your growth. Your growth is evolution. It is wisdom, and wisdom is knowing better and doing better, and using those situations as building blocks for where you're going to go. So you can't really forget about them,
Yes, exactly. You can't forget. You can't
Yeah.
forget. And I
Yeah.
think that forgive and forget, like forgiving them and then letting it be okay. Like if they haven't really taken any steps to change, like letting it be okay and letting them back in your life is just letting them back in your life in the same capacity is just recycle, like going back into the same cycle,
That's not wise.
yeah. And that's what forget will get you. It will get you the exact same thing you were just in,
Yeah.
or the exact same thing with somebody else. And like, we don't want that for you guys.
Yeah.
We
And
don't
that's
want
what I
that.
learned from my husband, which was that the really seeing someone change with you through a situation, morph with you through a situation and really create massive change that I think everyone can't do.
Yeah.
It's very rarely you find people that do wrong to you and are willing to go to the end of the earth and change their entire being so that you can be cohesive again.
Hmm.
And that it's so rare. I mean, I have one friend who I know that if we ever clash, like we can really sit down and be like, yo, like
Yeah.
that wasn't cool. I didn't like that. Like we can really talk through it. We can like we have that relationship where it gives space for both of us to grow, not for one person to grow and you got to forgive and move the hell on, right? Because
Hmm.
that's what a lot of people provide you. They're like lessons, and it felt like most people are lessons and not willing to change their ways, admit their ways, take accountability for their own healing. Because in all experiences, everyone has to heal through it. As small as it may be, everyone that played a part in it has a part to heal from it.
Hmm.
And if we reject that, then we don't heal. But to be wise, we do have to let go and move on a lot, a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for this conversation. Where can people find you?
So you can find me at queensrecognizequeens.com. I'm on Instagram as well as Facebook at Queens Recognize Queens. Twitter, QRQ Movement. Um, So not this month because it'll be ending, but I do group coaching programs as well as one-on-one programs, as well as tools that I'll be putting out there for people to learn on their own how to heal and how to love yourself, which I feel like that sounds really lofty, but when you really learn how to heal yourself, there's a greater love that you find for yourself. And when you find yourself to be so dope and amazing, you don't need anything to fill that space.
Thank you so much. Yes, everybody go check her out. Go explore Queens, Recognize Queens. She is amazing. I am so honored to have had her in here for this conversation. So thank you so much, and have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you too.
I'm so glad that we were able to bring this conversation to you. This is powerful stuff. A lot of times the past pains and traumas that we've experienced continue to hold us back because we either don't know how to process, are afraid to look at it, or can only see the bad, when really our past experiences have a great gift for us. And to help you to look at what are some of the things that are blocking you in your life, go ahead and get your free video and workbook guide, Unblock Your Dream Life, at kristeniris.com/unblock, which will help you to look at some of the things that are in your way, where those blocks come from. And it can be for a particular project or just the life that you want to live. Before you go, do me a favor. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave an honest review on iTunes, because it is the best way to help us get found by more melanated so that they can enter into these powerful conversations. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen or on my YouTube channel. And until next time, stand in your power, stand in your color, and stand for what you create.